Welcome to Homocide, the podcast. I'm Kevin.
And I'm Brandon.
And for those of you who are new, Homocide, the podcast is your newest favorite gay true crime podcast that's hosted by us two queerdos who really bonded over coffee, cocktails, and cock, a.k.a. roosters. We do love a good, thick, and aggressive rooster.
We sure do
Right,
love
Brandon?
a good rooster.
We do. We do love that. So
You're so ridiculous.
You're welcome. It's a gay podcast, so we're going to obviously talk about roosters. So Brandon, what can your story today be described as?
Well, I titled my story today, The Story of an Accidentally Caught Killer.
An accidentally caught killer.
Yes.
Well, accidents are sometimes good.
Right? Occasionally.
Well, mine is can be described as a gay murderer with a taste for more than just a dingalong.
A dingalong?
A dingaling.
Like I've never heard of a dingalong.
Who says a dingalong?
You.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Welcome to my dingalong sing-along.
That would be the
That was an
perfect
aggressive
musical.
laugh. Oh my God. Don't steal that.
Right. That's copywritten.
Dingalong,
Trademark.
a dingalong sing-along. You heard it first today on Homicide, the podcast.
It's a bunch of gay men singing the female lead parts in all major musicals.
That's actually really smart.
It is, right?
Yeah, I really like that.
Coming to a theater near you.
Dingaling sing-along. God, that's really good.
That is
actually
good.
really good. Someone's going to steal it, fuckers. Okay, anyway. Today's episode is titled Forget About It, New York City Murders.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is like the part 2 of our New York episode.
And we'll have part 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and
probably.
more. Yeah, but...
Because there's a lot of like fucked up killers here.
Oh my God, I was doing the research and I was like, jeez.
Yeah.
But don't get it twisted and listen to these news outlets like Fox News. New York is a great place. So
It is.
that's that. Cool. Well, we do have someone else here with us and we love her. And her name is Hannah.
Hi.
Hello.
I feel like I was sounding like I was being strangled or something as I said that.
And it was like, for those who can't see, which is a lot of you listening on, like not watching us on YouTube, but Anna was like pointing up towards the, oh, my beard is catching the mic again, but pointing up towards the microphone, just like, hello.
Okay. We're more appropriately positioned.
Positioned, yeah. I know, I feel a little bit, I don't know. Oh, my beard. I need to cut my beard. Okay. Anna, how are you? What's new? What's going on? How's
I'm
life?
good. On Friday, I went to something called the Gaia Music Collective. Have you guys heard of that?
No, what is that?
No, but I feel like that sounds familiar.
Gaia?
You've probably seen it on TikTok. It's this guy who put together basically choirs without any audition. You just come and you're like in a choir for a night.
Oh, how fun.
And you don't always actually go and do an actual song. There's
Yeah.
a lot of like improvisation nights where like together you just like riff with each other. But this night was Whitney Houston.
Oh my God, how fun.
It
Why was I not there?
so fun. You guys should definitely do it. It's
I wanna
also,
dance
like,
with somebody.
Yes. I thought we were going to do I just want to dance with somebody, but it was I Will Always Love You.
Oh my God, that's just...
Another good one.
Yes.
Oh, I love... Brandon, I will always love you. You're welcome.
Wow.
Let's hope so.
Wow, that was poetic.
That was so poetic.
Thank you for existing. You're welcome, Kevin. Just kidding. Okay, anyway. So that
Why do I
sounds
feel
really
like we
fun.
just got into an argument that I have no idea about?
Yeah, you were just silent and all
I'm
of
like,
it.
I don't...
But it's like, what do I
How
do?
do I
The
react?
whiplash.
What do I do with this? What else is new? That sounds fun.
Yeah, that was great. I don't know.
Great story.
Not
Yeah,
much.
that was great.
Nothing else.
Literally nothing
else.
Oh, I am still getting podcast guests.
Ooh, yeah.
Great.
I'm getting yeses sometimes. And
As
that's
you
really
should.
exciting. The
Yes.
Gaia Music Collective, what I was just talking about, the founder of that's going to come on my podcast.
Anna,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
I'm very excited
I
about
cannot
that.
wait for this to launch.
I know, me
and
too.
we're definitely going to plug it on here because why wouldn't we?
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm sure our 5 listeners would enjoy this.
Yeah, I hope that there's not a ton of listeners because it's probably going to be kind of not great at the beginning. You know what I mean?
No, it'll be fantastic.
We'll see. Fingers crossed.
I mean, mean, we're what? What episode is this in?
This
for
is
us?
episode 6.
We're episode 16,
Whoa.
and we're still not that great.
We have officially.
What are you talking about? You're amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, but we're now not an infant anymore. We're now a teenager.
We are.
We have our driver's license at this point.
We are getting our driver's license
You're getting
with this
moody.
episode.
yes.
You're hating your parents.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. We are.
Very
Goodness.
agitated.
Yes.
And everything.
Yeah, but also really, really excited for life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully, there's no murder.
And I'm still in my mother's belly.
Yes,
You
with
are.
my podcast.
You have not come out of the vaginal canal,
No,
but you will soon.
I'm just a fetus.
I'm just a fetus.
I'm just. It's like a
At
song.
least you're.
I was going that way, but what was coming out was not that tone, so I stopped.
No, I heard it. I heard it.
I love that. Well, I mean, if you were in Alabama, when you had the idea, you would have been.
Yes, you would have been.
Oh, somebody would get thrown in jail if they aborted
would.
me right now.
Yeah. So
That's
there's
dark.
that.
Anyway.
That's happening.
Just a little bit.
Brandon, do you have anything new and exciting in your life?
Do I ever?
I don't know. Do you?
I don't know.
Oh. All right. Well, on that note,
I know, right? I feel like we've just been like
working
overworking ourselves, which
and avoiding dealing with our emotional turmoil of our lost pet Marty, who is
Yeah,
here.
for sure.
She's on the shelf.
you
Well,
just can't see her.
her
But
picture is on the shelf.
we don't want her to fall again.
I know.
Oh yeah.
I think the last time that we recorded, had we already gotten her ashes? Did we
No.
talk about that? Oh, we didn't. Oh man. Oh, interesting. I think we just didn't talk about it, but
Oh, probably not.
we do have Marty back, which is great. I mean, she's in Tampa right now, but our niece ended up going and getting her from the USPS. Because
Was
we
it
weren't there.
USPS?
I think it was
FedEx, one of
UPS
those.
actually. Yeah.
It's really weird to be like, oh, you have my dead dog's ashes
Yeah, in the
your
mail.
back office.
In your back office, yeah. But our niece Brianna ended up going and getting her and putting her on our bed with one of her little blankets and toys
like wrapped on
around
top
her.
of the box so that she's like sitting where she would normally love
where
to
she
be
would like
sitting.
lay. I know, because we're
It's
not there.
cute and a little more.
So we have like a weird shrine to Marty right now on our bed in Tampa.
It's not going to be emotional at all going home on
No.
this
No.
coming Friday to see that.
Yeah, but Martina is here on the shelf so that Brandon doesn't put her behind the couch again.
How is that my fault? She fell on her own, and then I tried to fix it and just ruined it.
Well, you were the one doing it, so
Okay, right.
that's why it's your fault.
Listeners, it's always my fault.
Oh my God, is this what we're gonna do today? There's actually two things for everyone in a relationship. There's two things that if Brandon and I ever get into any sort of an argument, he always does these very
This is
two
not true.
specific things.
And at this point, I say it to joke about it,
Okay, but he always goes, "I have to do everything." Number one,
which is like partially true.
and now I forgot the second one. What was the second one?
It doesn't even matter now. It's not true.
Like a drop it.
Oh God. Anyway,
We'll talk about this later.
Oh, okay. Anyway, all right. Forget about it. New York City murders. Who goes first today?
I think I do.
I'm excited to hear your story.
I know I haven't told you anything about this one.
No, you haven't, which I'm excited about.
I am too.
So-
I feel like I wrote this one in a different way than normal, but we'll just see how it goes.
We're
as we go.
experimenting.
Yeah, we're taking a little. Where was I going with that?
Detour.
Yeah, detour. That's a good word. I had no idea what I was doing.
Like,
with that.
what the hell am I saying right now?
What am I?
All I can think of is I have what I mentioned before we started the podcast, a Werther's Original in my mouth, and I'm trying to not chew on it because I know that's not going to be.
So Brandon's mouth is overly wet.
It's
right
very
now.
moist.
What was that? The last guy would have loved you.
Very
What was his
salivating.
name? Well, you're not a
Oh,
woman.
the guy. Yeah.
The saliva
Why
drinker.
can't I remember his name? He was literally
Oh,
my
yeah.
last.
God. In episode 15.
Ahmed.
David. No. Yeah,
Ahmed.
yours was
Ahmad.
Ahmed.
Yep, and he would drink the saliva of 70 women.
Well,
He
you're-
wouldn't want my saliva.
No.
So I'm sure somebody would. But
Oh God.
just kidding.
I had a lot of messages that people were like, saliva?
Leave us a
I
review
know.
if you want to drink Brandon's saliva. Okay.
Please.
I know a couple of people that are obsessed with you that would be like, oh yeah, I would
Ew.
drink Brandon's saliva.
I hope nobody
who
wants
I'm
to
ta- you know
drink
who I'm
my
thinking
saliva.
about.
No, and I don't want to even think about it because I don't want to think of anybody drinking my saliva.
Nasty. Anyway. Okay, Brandon.
So again, this is the story of an accidentally caught killer. So, on June 28th of 1993, state police were working the graveyard shift on Long Island. Wow, I said that. I already started that off.
Would you like to try that again?
Take two. So my story is titled The Story of an Accidentally Caught Killer. So on June 28th of 1993, state police were working the graveyard shift in Long Island on the Southern State Highway. While on patrol, they noticed a 1984 Mazda B2000 pickup truck with a black cab driving down the road with no license plate. So obviously they threw on their lights to pull them over. However, the driver had other plans and decided to take off. So for around 20 to 25 minutes, the troopers held a high-speed chase down various roads along around. Oh my Lord, this is just awful already.
They're so cute.
Anyways, the troopers held a high-speed chase down various roads in Long Island, getting upwards of 90 miles an hour. The chase ended abruptly when the car attempted to make a left turn, lost control, and crashed into a light pole. Well. Running out of their cars, the police officers quickly grabbed 34-year-old Joel David Rifkin out of the truck and took him into custody.
Joel.
Yep, never trusted Joel. Anyways, taking a quick glance, they saw something. I'm really fucking this up right now.
Brandon, you have an A+ today.
Do I? For effort?
It's a D-.
Okay. Anyways, I'm just going to start that part over again. Okay. So they quickly grabbed 34-year-old Joel David Rifkin out of the truck and took him into custody. However, as they grabbed him, they couldn't help but smell something funny coming from the bed of the truck.
Oh, I thought they were
That's a sentence that made this whole thing work.
Yeah,
Then
I
totally
thought
skipped
you
over.
were going to say like a smell from him, and I was like, ew.
Ew, no,
Also
probably. He looked
awful.
like he smelled. Anyways, taking a quick glance, they saw something long, wrapped in plastic and bound with rope. Going in for closer inspection, they were shocked at what they just saw. Inside the plastic was the decomposing body of 22-year-old Tiffany Briscani.
Tiffany.
And from here, the police would accidentally solve a case of a man who had sexually assaulted, murdered, and dismembered at least 17 women between 1989 and 1993.
You know, we need to someday address this whole world of men and how they abuse women.
Oh, 100%. Because it's
Can we
always
just-
sexually assaulting.
I know. Ugh, anyway.
Because they all have issues that they don't deal with.
Oh, men.
So I'm going to jump into who Joel was.
Oh,
So
Joel.
Right. was born on January 20th, 1959, to two young college students who couldn't really take care of him. So they put him up for adoption. And catching the eye of Bernard and Janine Rifkin of Long Island, he was quickly adopted at 3 weeks old. Bernard and Janine were of the upper middle class, and they lived in East Meadow, Long Island. And eventually they adopted another child named Jan just a few years after they adopted Joel.
Jan.
Yeah, Jan and Joel. So at home,
Did they name him Joel when they
no, I
adopted him?
believe his name was. I have no idea.
Oh.
That's a great question.
I'm sorry, I
for
just
that.
thought you knew him.
I mean, we're not besties, but I wouldn't want him to be my bestie. At home, Joel had a great family life. His parents loved him, and they gave him everything that he would need. And according to his parents, they had no idea that he had any kind of issues along the way. So. However, growing up, Joel had a hard time in school. He never really fit in anywhere, and he was often bullied as a child for his learning disabilities. He suffered from undiagnosed dyslexia, samesies, spoke with a stutter, and he visibly had a hard time following instructions, which just added to the bullying.
So I think that this is worth mentioning, this underlying theme that we seem to have in like every episode.
Bullying?
Yeah. Stop bullying people.
Yeah, no, people are really shitty, and
Yeah.
and if he was not bullied, his whole story might not have ever happened.
I mean, maybe he's inherently just like, I don't know, evil.
Yeah.
But
well, I'm sure
still.
there's a little bit of that too
Yeah.
when we get in, but
Let's
there
stop
is something
bullying.
to be said about mistreating people and treating them like they are worthless and nothing. That makes people resent other people and then have these ideas of doing harm onto others.
I'm sure that there's like studies out there that actually talk about the idea of the impact that bullying can have.
Oh, for sure. I'm sure there are.
Or a correlation between serial killers and
Yeah.
bullying. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. So it was even known that he would often be one of the last ones to line up in lines, and even he would even get to class late to avoid other kids so he wouldn't be picked on. He did try to fit in at times, though. He tried to join the track team, thinking that being part of a team would help. However, the team was just as bad as everybody else. They would dunk his head in toilet bowls, and I even saw an A&E article, which is the only place that I saw this, but it was A&E. I figured it was a little bit more legit because they did do a like full story on him, and you could see interviews of him speaking and stuff. But in this article, it said that there was even an incident where they had stuffed a dead chicken into his mouth, which is really fucked up.
What?
Yeah. And then there was another time when he wanted to join the yearbook club because he liked taking pictures. Because a few sources I saw said that he was super creative and he liked taking any kind of pictures he could. However, when he ended up getting his camera stolen, and then he was excluded from the rap party at the end of the year by the senior girls who were overseeing it because they didn't want him there. So Joel grew up to be a very isolated person, and it said that in his late teenage years he developed some odd, dark sexual fantasies. Like he would have daydreams of sexually assaulting and stabbing women and strangling sex workers.
Oh no.
In this case, I feel like the conversation about bullying, like with boys like this, there are just certain boys that have a rancid vibe.
Oh, 100.
Like
I
you
completely agree
know
with
something
that.
is wrong
100,
with them.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make it okay to mistreat people.
No.
But it's
I
like,
agree.
I feel like these girls that like left him out of this party were probably just freaked out by
I'm
him.
sure they were
They
freaked out
probably
by
were
him.
like, ew, something's
Like
deeply
you're a
wrong with
creep.
you.
Yeah. Agree.
Yeah.
Agree.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was at this time that he would start to get a little bit more intrigued with sex workers. And he would often drive around Hempstead, Long Island on the lookout. Eventually, Joel graduated from East Meadow High School in 1977 and jumped around to a couple different colleges in the area. And it's at this time that he was known for skipping class, and he would often not show up to any of his part-time jobs, all because by the time he started college, his attraction to sex workers grew so much that it kind of overtook him.
Yeah.
So eventually, due to his poor grades and lack of wanting to be in school, he ended up dropping out of college. And throughout his time, he was living with his parents, and he would go back and forth from living with him to having his own place. But by the time he dropped out, he was living with his parents, and he eventually got a job as a landscaper. So at this point, Joel's urges to hurt someone, which is really terrifying, kept growing. It's even known that Joel started to collect books and press clippings and news article clippings from the newspaper on serial killers who targeted women. Yeah, so he was just a creep. By 1987, a few things started to shift in his life. First was that his father died by suicide to end the pain of prostate cancer.
That's sad.
And then on August 22nd, 1987, Joel ended up getting arrested for soliciting a sex worker after offering an undercover female police officer money for sex. Both of these incidents really only causes depression to get even deeper.
Yeah.
So in 1989, he was ready to take the next step from enjoying the company of sex workers to fulfilling his fantasies. So I have in here that this is the time when a trigger warning should be part of the programming.
Trigger warning.
Because it gets a little bit rough. Kind of the rest bit of it. But I tried to keep it to a minimum. It's not too crazy. So in either February or March of 1989, I kind of saw two mixed times on that. Joel's mom went on a business trip because at this point it was he was living with just his mom because his father passed away. So she went on a business trip and left Joel on his own at the house, and he thought, what a better time to bring a sex worker over.
To his mom's house?
Yeah. So he went out
Joel.
and found 24-year-old Manhattan-based sex worker named Heidi. The last name is Balch.
Bulk.
Bulk, is that how you say it? No. I'm so bad with names.
I mean, I don't know, but I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who at the time was going by Susie. Yeah. Bringing her back to his home in Long Island.
Wait, he found her in Manhattan?
Yeah, he would.
Okay.
He would go into Manhattan and find sex workers and bring them. He
I
wouldn't
just-
always bring them to his
What a
house.
long trip, right?
But
Like,
yeah.
that's a long trip.
Yeah.
I feel like if I was a sex worker, I'd be like, no, thank you.
Right. Well, these, I mean, it was
Heidi.
a lot of the women that he brought in were sex workers, and a lot of them were addicted to drugs. And so the money was just something that was really promising, right?
Yeah.
So, and there's a lot of these instances where he also helped supply drugs and bought drugs for these
No,
women.
he knew
So-
what to do to
No, he
convince
did.
people to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So he brings her back to the home, and the next events I saw kind of like were a little bit jumbled. So I'm not sure what happened necessarily first, but I did find one source that kind of gave me a better view of it. So I wrote this first note saying that the next events from what I've seen are hard to explain what happened first. However, the events this woman went through were horrifying. But according to a few sources, the events were that he brought her home and they had sex. And at some point shortly after, Joel decided to bludgeon her over the head. And from what I saw, it was with a Hauser artillery shell, which looked, from when I looked it up, it looked like a massive missile or like a very large bullet. So it was like big. It was maybe a couple feet tall and like wide. So it looked like a very just heavy object. And I have in here, like a very large bullet, but I'm also gay and I know nothing about guns. So if you're listening and you're judging me on it, I'll allow it because I don't know what I'm talking about. So, in Joel's account, he kept hitting her until he got tired. However, Heidi wasn't dead. And there was a struggle. And there was a note that she even bit his fingers before he grabbed her neck and strangled Heidi to death.
Heidi.
And then this is where he takes his murders too far. So, I mean, he murdered in general. That's already too far. But this is like, he takes the next step. So, after a quick nap for a few hours, because he was tired, Joel grabbed Heidi's body and brought her down to the basement and draped her body over the washer and dryer to make a makeshift operating table. From here, it's known that Joel started to dismember her body using an X-Acto knife. And if you know what an X-Acto knife, it's a tiny little knife. Yeah.
That's so disturbing.
It's actually sadistic.
Yeah,
as fuck.
like he was
like that.
performing a surgery, like using an X-Acto knife to cut her. And then, so he also severed her fingertips. It was noted that he pulled out her teeth and he decapitated her.
All right.
Yeah.
Jesus
So
Christ.
that's the brunt of the hardest parts, but there's a little bit more later on. But he then put her severed head in a paint can. And he placed her body pieces into garbage bags. He then took the head and legs and dumped them in the woods in Hopewell, New Jersey, and took her arms and torso and threw them into the East River.
What is it about the East River and the Hudson?
I know.
People are like, let me
I know.
just toss bodies. Yeah,
That's
Right.
I'm like, I would never get into the Hudson. Like, I would never
No.
do like the jet ski thing.
No.
thought the same shit when we talked. Yeah,
I know. I'm
no,
like,
thank you. I'm like, you know what's in that water?
It's
Yeah.
gross.
there's a lot of dead people in
A
there.
lot of dead
no
people.
thanks.
So his ultimate goal was to obviously make it difficult for people to find out what happened, and it worked. So 7 days later, a paint can was found at the Hopewell Valley Golf Course near the 7th hole of the course, because that's where he dropped it off. Inside, they found the decomposing head of Heidi. However, at the time, the police were not able to connect the head with any missing persons, and there was no evidence to who committed the crime. And I'm sure Joel got some kick out of it, which only made it worse because he didn't get caught.
That's so fucked up too, because that I think is why a lot of these people will target sex workers or people because they just assume that.
Yeah, no, and that's part of I have a note in here at one point too, where I say that he here, I'll actually scroll down. He was quoted at one point saying, I killed prostitutes because they had no one. They had no lasting relationships, no family who cared. No one would ever come looking for them. So he purposefully looked out for people. And this is kind of like the stories that we did last week. They both looked for sex workers because they just assumed that they didn't have anybody looking for them.
Ugh.
Which is disturbing and awful.
Yeah.
So let me get back to my spot. Okay, so taking about a year break, Joel started to think of his next fix. So meeting Julie Blackbird in his next search for a sex worker, Joel jumped at the opportunity to bring her back to his mother's house because he was a gem without his own home.
But his poor mom,
I know.
her husband died by suicide, and then now she's just
And
having
she
all these
thinks that
women murdered in her home.
But she also doesn't know what's happening, and she thinks that her son is like this normal guy, right? Which is really shitty. So again, this time around, his mother happened to not be home and be out of town. So he, again, saw another opportunity. This time they had sex and they fell asleep. So by the next morning, Joel got a little bit panicked and he grabbed a table leg and beat her with it until she was unconscious. Okay. He then once again strangled her to death. And just like before, he dismembered her body. This time, he changed it up, though. He put the pieces in buckets that he had weighed down with concrete. And he threw the buckets into the East River and in a canal in Brooklyn. Shortly after the murder of Julie, Joel decided to start his own landscaping business, which makes sense because he was in landscaping. However, Joel had other reasons of liking this career because he was able to purchase as many tools as he would want without anybody questioning him. He was able to have storage units to hold his tools and supplies, and no one would wonder why he would need it. And no one would question him if he was driving all over the city to random locations because his service area could be anywhere.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so...
Never going to look at landscapers the same.
I know, right? So from here, his killings didn't stop and only became more frequent, and eventually killing 17 women before he was caught. So in my research, it's so funny because as I was doing my research, I looked at a lot of different sources, and at first I couldn't find a lot of information on the women that he killed. And I have a note saying I couldn't find all of the information, but here's a few. But I'm pretty sure I found information on almost everybody.
Wow.
So I have them just listed, so I'm just going to go through them. They're not in any particular order. I tried to be in the timing of it, but there was a lot of sources that jumped around, so this kind of jumps around a little bit. So in May of 1991, he met 31-year-old Barbara Jacobs, who had sex with Joel and eventually fell asleep in his bed. Seeing a pattern. Seeing this as an opportune time, Joel grabbed the same table leg and bludgeoned Barbara and eventually strangled her to death. He put her body in a plastic bag and forced it into a cardboard box. A few hours after Joel dumped her body in the Hudson River, her body was found by New York firefighters that were on a training exercise. On September 1st, 1991, Joel met 22-year-old Mary Ellen DeLuca, and he brought her to a cheap motel and supplied her with drugs, and they eventually had sex. For her murder, he eventually made comments that she told him that she wanted to die, and that she accepted her own murder. So deciding to dispose her body, I wanted to say depose for a second. That's not. Dispose her body. He grabbed a steamer trunk, which is one of those bigger trunks, big wooden old timey kind of trunks. He found a cheap one, and he put her body in it to take her out of the motel, so nobody noticed that he was bringing a body out of this cheap motel. Which
is it not weird to have a big old trunk going in and out of it?
I mean, I just think motels. I mean, you expect to see something weird coming out.
I don't know. I'm not into motels.
No, me neither.
And it reminds me of Beatty, Nevada.
Ooh, yeah.
If you're ever going to Beatty, Nevada, first off, don't. But don't stay in motels. Okay.
It was gross. That has no context to any of that.
It doesn't. Yeah. We were on a road trip and we went to go to, where were we going?
We flew to Vegas, and then we were going through Death Valley to...
That's right. To Yosemite and all that. Yeah. And Brandon's mom booked this little motel thing in Beatty, Nevada. And we pulled into the town and I was like, ew. We pulled up to the motel.
It was terrifying.
And I was like, no. But we went in anyway. And
you and my mom went in.
Yeah, Palma and I went in. But when we walked into the motel, there was no one in there in the front desk. And there was just like a cage in the back, like door cage with like some sheet on top of it too. And a phone, and it said ring the phone when you arrive. So we like picked up the phone and we're like, hi, we're here to check in. So some teenager runs
But the phone rang on the other side of the creepy door.
The phone rang literally on the opposite side, and you could hear somebody through the gated security door. They were like, hello. And yeah, it was really bizarre. So this teenager comes out with no shoes.
Barefoot.
Just horrible. Barefoot, dressed horrible. And we're like, oh.
I mean, they walked out of the front door all together, and all I could think is he looks like he'd smell like cat pee.
And he did. So he like walks us across the parking lot to this area. He's still barefoot, and opens up this door and walks into this disgusting dark. Somebody was murdered in that room, and it was
He's walking inside the room with no
his
shoes on,
no shoes
no
on,
socks
which
on.
I barely do in hotels anyway. But we got back to there, and I was like, "Sorry, no, like I'm not staying here." And so anyway, we ended up getting in a fight with his mother, who came out yelling at us because we were like, "Yeah, we're not staying here. Goodbye." And that was that. So, Beatty, Nevada.
Whoa.
I will never go there again.
It was gross.
Yeah.
So, on that note, he left the motel with this big wooden suitcase, I guess, and then and he dumped her body in a field by a rest stop in Cornwall, New York, and her body was eventually found in October and again she was murdered in September. But her body was so far decomposed they couldn't identify her until Joel was caught. Okay, so also in September of 1991, he met 31-year-old Yun Lee, who was a Korean immigrant, who he ended up strangling, and whose body was found in the East River in the same steamer trunk that he used to hide Mary's body. Yeah, so he just repurposed it. Yeah.
Oh, no.
Then there was 28-year-old Lorraine Veto. Her body was found jammed in a 55-gallon oil drum in Coney Island Creek. However, this time, Lorraine's body was not found for about 6 months after her death. It was also stated that after her murder, Joel started to use oil drums for a few more of his victims, and he eventually noted that he used them in at least 4 of the murders. Then in April 1992, Joel met 25-year-old Iris Sanchez, who he strangled and drove to JFK Airport, and he left his body beneath a mattress in a vacant lot, which was not found until Joel's arrest in 1993. Lord. So her body was underneath this random mattress in this vacant lot for like a year, which is already kind of terrifying to know that there could be just a body laying somewhere that that's creepy.
Or that a mattress just hangs out in some lot for that long.
Right. Yeah. So then on May 13th, 1992, the body of 39-year-old Marion Holman was also found in Coney Island Creek. Another woman was found in an oil drum in Newtown Creek in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. This woman, which Joel called woman number 6, was strangled while she was performing oral sex on him. Cool. Unfortunately, the body has yet to be identified, and I believe there's still sad. 2 women that have yet to be identified. That's sad. On May 25th, 1992, Joel met 33-year-old Anna Lopez.
Anna!
Yeah.
No.
And he left her body in the woods right off of Interstate 84 in Brewster, New York. Then there was 21-year-old Violetta O'Neill. She was another sex worker that Joel brought to his mother's house in Long Island. Just like a few of the others, Joel strangled Violetta, dismembering her body, put her in black plastic bags, and dumped her body in various waterways around the city. Oh my God. Then there was 39-year-old Mary Catherine Williams, which he frequently sought her out as a sex worker. And he noted that they typically had a great time. However, in October of 1992, she fell asleep in his car, and he must have found this as like some kind of
like them falling asleep.
Yeah, he just saw their vulnerability in that place, and then he took advantage of it. And she ended up waking up to him strangling her. Her body was eventually found on December 21st in Yorktown, which is a subdivision in Westchester. On November 16th, 1992, Joel, I don't like how I worded this one, but snapped the neck of Jenny Soto, who reports mentioned how she must have been a fighter because of the way her fingernails were broken, appearing to have fought back. Oh. Then around February 1993, Joel killed Leah Evans and left her body in Northamptons. And then 28-year-old Lauren Marquez was picked up by Joel on April 2nd of 1993 while she was working on 2nd Ave in Manhattan, who almost got away when she was being strangled because Joel was distracted by somebody walking by. As she fought back, Joel again snapped her neck and dumped her body in the Long Island Central Pine Barrens. Now, through this time, the police never could really identify who the murderer was because every time it was different and there was no patterns.
Yeah.
And there were many unsure if it was by the same person or different people. And some people didn't get caught or didn't get found until after he was caught. So this kind of like caused a storm in the community. And so this is where I jump back to the beginning of the story. So again, in June of 1993, Joel met Tiffany Briscani, who was working the streets. She was working on Allen Street in Manhattan. And just a little bit about her. She had dreams of moving to the big city to become an actress on Broadway. Tiffany's dreams were stripped from her when she got into the wrong crowd. And she started to abuse drugs and hard drugs like heroin. And then eventually became a stripper at various New York strip clubs. And then she eventually met her boyfriend and pimp, Dave Rubenstein, who she was with the night that Joel picked her up. Telling Dave that she would be back in about 20 minutes, they said goodbye, and Joel and Tiffany went on their way. However, she would never end up coming back. So shortly after Joel picked her up, they drove to the New York Post parking lot at 210 South Street, which is on the north side of the Manhattan Bridge. And it's here where Joel strangled Tiffany and then drove home to his mother's house with the body in the trunk. By the time he got to his mother's house, it was the early hours of the morning, and his mother was eager to leave to run some errands. And now what I didn't mention is that with this murder and a couple of the other murderers, he was using his mom's car.
Oh my God.
So he got home, she grabbed the keys and headed on her way to run some errands. Luckily for Joel, she did not open up the trunk, and she never knew the body was inside the entire time she was gone. Yeah. So, yeah, as you're talking about his mother before, I'm like, just wait till we get to that point.
Jesus.
So by the time she got home, Joel went and wrapped the body in tarp and put her body in a wheelbarrow. And he let her sit in the summer heat of their garage for 3 days before anything happened.
Okay, how did the mom not smell that?
Yeah.
I don't know. That was one of my questions too. Actually, I might answer it in a little bit. So give me a little bit and I might have an answer for you.
Okay.
So then when Joel went to dispose of the body about 15 miles north of his home is when the state troopers noticed his missing license plate. So quickly after
Wait,
they...
This is still his mom's car though, right?
So no, this was back into his truck. So he did the high-speed chase in his truck in the bottom.
Oh, that's right. We're back at the chase.
Yep. So we're
Okay,
back
yeah,
at the
yeah.
beginning.
Okay.
So quickly, the police ended up bringing Joel in for questioning since they found the body of a woman in the bed of his truck. Luckily for the police, I saw a couple different things where at first he didn't admit to anything, but then I also saw other ones that said that Joel was open about everything. But what I do know is that eventually he described all 17 murders, named all of them that he could, and then sketched out on maps where he disposed of the victims that have yet to be found.
Jesus.
So in their investigations, the police found dozens of ID cards, driver's licenses, credit cards, photographs, jewelry, and piles of clothing from his victims in his home. They also found a wheelbarrow. That's such a weird word.
A wheelbarrow.
And a chainsaw stained with blood.
No.
And this is where I was saying might get to that point. Neighbors came out and talked about how they often smelled a foul smell coming from their home, but they all assumed it was from the fertilizer of his landscaping business. So I could only imagine his mother might have thought that the smells were coming from something having to do with the landscaping business. With Joel's admission, he obviously was found guilty, and he was eventually sent. This is
An aggressive ambulance.
I know, right?
And
it's like the perfect timing because I'm talking about him getting
well,
convicted.
yeah, that's what they're
We
basically.
Yeah, so
This was the experience when they arrived at the house. All right. Anyway.
yeah, that's awful. Anyways, he was obviously found guilty and was eventually sentenced to 203 years in prison. And I saw that he only got convicted of 9 of the 17 murders. So at first he was sentenced to the Attica Correctional Facility, where he ended up having some conflicts with other inmates, causing him to be a bit disruptive. One that was noted was that he got into an altercation with another mass murderer named Colin Ferguson, who was in prison for the 1993 Long Island Railroad mass shooting that killed 6 people. So thinking that this could escalate and would cause issues for everybody in the prison. Prison officials ended up placing Joel in solitary confinement for 23 hours of the day for about 4 years.
Great.
Right?
God.
In 2000, Joel attempted to sue the prison for this treatment, and I have a note that says, "Cause boo-hoo for you." Like
my
you
God.
killed 17 people. I don't give a fuck.
And do you think that you have
if you're in
anything to
solitary
stand on?
confinement.
Okay.
And he actually like wanted money for it too.
Oh my God.
Yeah, which I didn't put in here, but it was just like
He's
this is
incredible.
what starts to like to annoy me, that these people, you just killed 17 people and you are upset about how somebody's treating you. Go fuck yourself,
Yeah.
right?
No, I actually think that like the conversation last time about the death penalty, I actually think that is the treatment that every like mass
agree.
murderer
Yeah.
should get.
I
You should
agree.
get solitary confinement, but you should have to live
Yes, you
by
should
yourself.
be. You should be stuck in a room, not
And it
being able
should
to
be
leave
24
Yeah.
or
hours
talk
a
to
day.
other people, because you don't deserve to be around other people.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
I always envision solitary confinement too. Did you guys ever watch the show Oz?
No.
It was when we were younger.
But it's with what's his name, who's super hot, right?
Oh God! Well, there's a lot of them that are hot in there. Oh, Chris. Oh shit, no shit. He's in SUV or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever his name is. He's very and he's naked in it. But as a young gay boy, I was like, oh my God, there's dicks in this show. But when they put them into solitary confinement,
It's not even just you as a little boy. You right now would be like, ooh, there's sticks in there.
yeah, love dicks for sure.
Like we said,
But-
you love roosters.
Roosters. We were literally walking today, and I was like, Brandon, I love naked men.
And I was like, why did
Okay.
you just say that? I'm like, I know you do it.
And I was like, I'm just trying to have conversation. It was really funny. But anyway, no, but the show Oz, when they were put into solitary confinement, they were stripped, they were naked, they were thrown into like this pen in the dark with like a spotlight and like no food. It was fucked. And like, I think they even had to like go to the bathroom. There was no toilet in there. And I was like, whoa. So when I envision solitary confinement, that is what I envision.
Yeah.
I envision the Orange is the New Black scenes. Did you guys ever watch that?
You loved
A
that,
little
yeah.
bit,
Yeah,
He
there
watched
were
it
a
more than me.
couple of solitary
Yeah.
confinement
Oh, were there?
episodes. Yeah,
I mean, I couldn't imagine it.
I think it would be a psychological torture.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And there's no reason I'll ever put myself in that place to be in there.
No.
But
So-
you're not making decisions to murder
Yeah.
people. I mean,
No.
yeah.
So, when Joel decided to sue the prison, he said that they were violating his constitutional rights.
Okay.
However, the courts ruled in the prison's favor. However, he was still eventually transferred to a different correctional facility, which was Clinton Correctional Facility in Dannemora. I've never heard of this town before.
I think it's Dane Mora.
Dannemora, Dannemora,
I might be
in
wrong.
New York, where he is not in solitary confinement currently.
Is the motherfucker still alive?
I mean, I'm assuming he is.
Oh.
So in 2002, Joel tried to appeal the convictions of the murder of the 9 women. However, the Supreme Court of New York rejected it. So Joel will be eligible for parole in 2197 at the ripe age of 238.
So here's my question. He tried to appeal the convictions of murders that he admitted to and showed them where the bodies were.
Yes. However, okay, and I probably should have noted this. And maybe I probably should have taken this part out, because I couldn't tell if it was for the 9 murders of the women he already did, because the note I saw this a couple times. It said 9. However, I also got the feeling that he was trying to appeal the convictions of the other women that he killed, because he was not convicted for all of the killings yet.
Got it.
So I wasn't sure if it was for that 9 women or the 8 women that he did not get convicted of.
I wonder when that happens, because this happens often where they're like, well, we convicted of the 2 of the 15 murders. And I wonder if they don't pursue it because of the cost to the county, states.
I mean, they could. I'm not. Yeah.
But that sucks for the people that are murdered and their families, because the conviction
for sure.
is not there.
At least in this instance, he basically told them that he did kill all of these people. So I don't know why he wasn't convicted of all of them in the first place.
Again, it might be that. It might be
It
like
could be.
it's too costly to have
It
trials
could be
for all these. Yeah.
Because at this point, they're like, he's already going to be in prison for over 200. Like, he's not going to live to 200.
But it's also like, why doesn't the state do the state against all 17 in one trial? Or is that just like too bulky? I don't know. It's interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have someone
Yeah.
come on and speak to that.
Can we have a judge, please?
Right, do we know a judge
Or
of the state of New York?
Prosecutor?
I mean,
And I'm
my
sure we
mom
do.
deals with prisoner complaints as a lawyer, but she's not allowed to like come on
Well, shit.
media and talk about things.
That's right. Well, poop.
So poop. Hi, Mom, though.
Well, all right. I was going to say, maybe we can have like, who's the attorney general? Is it Letitia?
Oh, yeah.
Is it Letitia?
Yes. Because she's the one that
Letitia James.
brought
right?
charges on Trump.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love her. I'm sure she can't also talk. So
Maybe we could do an episode where it's like those TV shows where they have like the screen is like black and they like alter their voice.
The anonymous
So they're
voice.
like talking like this or something.
That's really creepy.
I know, you're
that
welcome.
All right.
I make good radio, I guess. I'm just kidding. So I just have some interesting facts. One is what I already said, which was the quote where he talked about killing prostitutes, sex workers. I tried to switch it in my own vernacular, but that's what he said.
Yeah, his quote is as saying.
And to all of the sources out there that I read, do better and fix your words and don't use that. Like, it's really easy to change that to sex workers.
I agree.
Not just in his quotes. Like, obviously his quotes is one thing, but in all of the research I read, they only consider them that one thing. And it's like, come on, it's 2023. I think we can fix that.
It's 2024.
It's 2024. It is totally 2024. It's
But
March.
I do think that I think that being sex workers, that's more the last 10 years, isn't it? Or maybe even the last 5?
Yeah, but some of the articles I was reading were not
Shitty.
told.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Even if that, they we should update it. But
Yeah.
anyway.
Anyways, so the first victim, who we know now as Heidi, went by many different names and social security numbers at the time because she was trying to hide herself. That they couldn't actually identify her, who she was. So she was one of the unidentified bodies.
Okay.
However, in 2013, they were able to do a DNA test using the DNA from her mother and her father to confirm it was her. So
Heidi.
she was killed in 1992?
92, yeah.
Or 1991, or maybe even earlier. I don't even remember the date at this point.
Yeah. The early 90s.
Yeah, so she wasn't confirmed until 2013 that it was her.
Wow.
2 weeks after the death of Tiffany, David Rubenstein, like I said, her boyfriend and pimp, died by suicide by overdose, and it is said it's due to the guilt of her death, which is super sad because from what I read, it like they actually were in a relationship.
I know, but then you think
lot-
about it, and you're like, you were her pimp. You were pimping out your girlfriend for sex work. That honestly, I don't know. I don't know a lot of or any sex workers, but I feel that it's not something like there. You said something in here about like they would have a great time, and I'm like, he would have a great time.
Exactly.
I don't know. I just don't.
But
know
that was him saying we would have a great time. That was like his own account.
I'm sure that there are people that enjoy sex work, which is great. But I have a feeling like a lot of times it's work. It's not.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? Do you guys
Her
get what I'm
job
saying?
is
Great.
to make you feel like it's a great time.
Yeah. So you had a good time.
So you had a
was
good time.
Likely
Exactly.
not.
So,
But it's difficult to know like that.
He's so aggressive.
Sirens today. Yeah.
right? Can y'all stop murdering people out there?
Jesus.
Pause for a second.
Pause for the alarm.
We're doing our podcast. Thank you.
Jeez. No, but it's rough to like hear like he died by suicide because of the guilt from but like he was actively pimping her out.
I know.
So it's
just
like
a
it's a
double-edged kind of situation.
Yeah.
So the last note I have in here is in an interview with A&E, Joel commented that some of his victims couldn't satisfy him or please him, and a few ridiculed him, which caused him to make the decision to kill them.
Okay, Joel.
Yeah. So fuck you, Joel.
If you're alive, you're a shitbag.
So that's
Guys, somebody was literally murdered in my apartment a couple years ago.
I'm sorry.
Like-
Not
in the
my
one you're
not,
living in?
No, not
Oh, in
the
the
current
building.
one, but the apartment that I was living in like at that time.
You're like the real life version of Only Murders in the Building.
right.
Yeah.
This is interesting.
Totally.
Can you tell us for a second what
Yeah.
happened?
So I was living in this apartment in the financial district, like a luxury apartment. Like it was nice
Yeah.
because we got it for COVID pricing. So
Love.
slay.
Love.
But me and my boyfriend were out of town. We were in Texas, like visiting my family.
Mm-hmm.
And then our roommates texted us the article about it. Apparently, there were 2 men that were seen rolling an oil drum out of the apartment.
That's so creepy.
And the doormen were like,
What are you doing?
What's that? Like they questioned them about it because they were like, that's fucking
That's
weird.
strange.
Why do you have an oil bin in this luxury apartment in the financial
what
district?
are you doing? And they were just like, oh, we're moving. And they were like, okay.
No.
moves
Like,
an oil drum?
I mean, no, exactly. And, I mean, the doormen weren't going to be like, well, open your oil drum.
Right? Right. No, if that was me, I'd be like, yeah, go with
Yeah,
it.
they
I
were
don't need to
literally
see
just
what's in
like,
your oil
okay.
drum.
But I
we'll
would like
get out
call
of
the
here.
cops and be like, suspicion.
Well,
Yeah.
so I don't know how exactly they connected the dots. I think it was something like the phone bills or I don't know. But the oil drum was found in New Jersey, suburban New Jersey, like in a random neighborhood.
What?
Not a bad neighborhood either. Just
Yeah.
a random neighborhood
Yeah.
that they like
Just
dropped
dropped it
this oil drum at. So they found the body, and then this search went out for like oil drum. You know, like I don't know exactly how they
Yeah.
traced it back to our apartment, but the doormen were like, oh yeah, we did see somebody roll an oil drum out of here. And then they went back, saw it on the cameras, and then traced it back to people in my apartment. Not literally my apartment.
Yeah.
I'm like, and it was my roommates and they're murderers. No, but like not on my floor or anything, but I think it was like an Airbnb.
Yeah.
And there were like a couple of people that it was a sex worker.
No.
And
So
yeah,
fucked up.
it was a sex worker, and those people I think just like rented the Airbnb for a night, killed this woman, and we never really got
Like the
information
details about it, yeah.
like what happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, like
What the
I think she
fuck?
was in the apartment for a couple days before they took her out. Like,
I mean, I'm sure that they were like, oh, great. Now we need to get an oil drum.
Right. And where do you even find an
Like,
oil drum? Like,
Yeah.
where do you, where, do,
I don't like. I
No
would
idea.
never. I would. My mind.
especially
would
as an
never,
Airbnb guest?
yeah, like what? So weird.
I-
So weird.
Ugh. But also, like, do they have to disclose that on the Airbnb?
I mean,
to our
I feel
home.
like
Somebody
at that
was
point
murdered
you
here.
would have to just sell your Airbnb. Like, I don't even know.
Yeah. Ugh. That's fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anna coming in hot with
Well,
that.
we were very
no.
disturbed by it for
I
a
was,
while afterwards. We were like, maybe we
I
need to
would've-
get
yeah.
out of this.
100
Do we need to
100%.
maybe move?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you. Wow. Well, Jesus. All right. Wow.
There you go.
Just dropped that.
Wow.
Right.
Just this whole story, the whole time I've been like, whoa, this is kind of reminding me of
Yeah. I mean,
That-
it's oil drums.
the oil drum, the sex
Yeah,
worker,
sex worker,
like,
murder.
insane.
Yeah.
New York, dropping them off
dropping
in
them
random
off
places.
in random places. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you guys see the oil drums? I'm not sure why it reminds me of this. Some Forensic Files for sure, but there was a movie, Cloverfield 3 or
Yeah.
Cloverfield 2
I think
with
I
John
saw
Goodman.
Yes.
Right?
It was the
and,
second one.
And
I
it's
think.
like in a bunker when it happens or whatever. Because the same
Yeah.
thing that happens in New York and Cloverfield is happening still, but it's
In
like
other
a different
places.
sub story or whatever. But they're like in the bunker, and he had killed people but dissolved them in oil drums of acid.
Yeah.
And the guy that was with them that he had killed, he was like putting his body in there or whatever when she
Yeah.
like yeah. Ugh.
Which there's like a lot of stories of oil drum and acid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If
if
you
I-
see an oil drum,
I'm not going to.
Get
I'm
away.
just going to question everything.
If you know somebody with an oil drum that shouldn't have one, maybe just call the police.
yeah.
or I'm
Don't
just,
ask questions,
I'm
just
not
call
ever
the
going to talk
police.
to you again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ew. I don't. My story does not have oil drums, you guys.
Good.
So
Well, are you ready to?
yeah,
Dive in.
I'm a little gooped and gagged by both of your stories,
You're welcome.
and this one's going to be rough.
I
Oh
know
my
because
gosh.
I heard you doing this one, and for those who don't know Kevin, he can be very like vocal when he's reading stuff and be like, "Oh, what?"
I think you can just
And
say.
he's writing it, and I'm like, what is this?"
I would just say that I can be vocal. Full stop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just you're loud,
Yeah. I think a lot of Kevin's are. I'm not loud.
loud and proud.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'll take it. All right. Anyway, yes, I'm ready to dive into my episode. Well, this is the full episode, but my actual
Your story.
yeah, which I don't know that I named.
You gave us like the little tease in the beginning. What was that?
I did. My little tease was a gay murderer with a taste for more than dingalong,
Oh, that's right. You said
is what I said.
dingalong, sing
He
along.
wants more than a ding along. He wants a sing along.
What's a dingalong sing-along? That's what my title is dingalong sing-along. So,
Perfect.
welcome to my...
Now, if there's no singing in
story.
this, I'm going to be very upset.
It was the early morning hours. No, I'm just kidding.
You have to sing the whole story.
Could you imagine? Oh my God. All right, we can dive in. Are we ready?
Let's do it.
All right. Okay. Are we ready?
Y'all ready for this? Okay. We don't have the rights.
No, we don't. But we only did 0.5 seconds, so we're fine. Okay.
I'm so excited for this.
So my title today is
Dingalong, dingalong, sing-along.
Dingalong, sing-along.
It's just a dingaless.
Is Dingalong Sing-Along. Starring, just kidding. Okay, so it was the early morning hours of September 14th, 1997, when Addison Verrill, a gay reporter at Variety who covered the film industry, entered into a New York City Christopher Street bar named Badlands.
Is that still around?
I don't think so.
I don't think I've heard of that one.
Yeah. Addison quickly noticed a man and offered him a beer. After conversation and a few drinks, both began to party, consuming poppers, cocaine, and more alcohol.
As one does.
As one does. After, I mean, I've never done poppers or cocaine.
I haven't either.
But some do. No judgment. After moving to another bar, which happened to be a gay BDSM bar called Mine Shaft.
Of course it was called Mine Shaft.
Yep. The two decided to take things a bit further and hopped into a cab. Did you just fart?
No, it was my hand on the couch.
It was like, excuse me.
Wow.
Right? Like I would not hold that
I mean, I don't know. Okay.
mid-story.
You know, sometimes when you like move and you're like, oh shit. And you don't mean to fart, but it like just kind of comes out. Like your butthole slips a little bit. And
Yeah, some are wider than others.
buttholes?
Wider.
What?
I don't know. I just said that.
Okay. Back to my
You know when you say something and you're like, why the fuck did I just say that? It makes no sense.
yeah. Like right now?
Anyways, we all fart.
All right. We do.
I just haven't yet in this podcast recording it.
Well, that's nice. Okay. So back to our BDSM bar called Mineshaft. The two decided to take things a bit further and hopped into a cab heading to Addison's New York City studio apartment, which was on Horatio Street. And if you don't know where Horatio Street is, it's in the West. Well, it's in Greenwich Village. It's a gorgeous street, by the way.
I
It's
would
one of
love
those
to live down
cobblestone
there.
streets. Yeah. Once
Brown
there,
tone.
the two of them kept drinking and consuming drugs. And finally, which they headed there about 6 a.m., which is like,
Whoa.
I don't know how people
Wait,
do
how
that.
old were they?
Right.
In their 20s.
I mean,
Okay.
yeah, in my 20s, I definitely would have done that. Now?
I think
Hell no.
that Addison was older. I think he was in his 40s.
Oh my
But-
God.
Yeah. So anyway, 6 a.m. they head over to Addison's apartment, kept drinking and consuming drugs, and then finally around 7:30 a.m. the two finally get saucy and have some sex. So afterwards, things turned quite south. They turned south quite quickly. So what Addison didn't know was that this would be his last night alive. So
Addison.
the man he brought home would be his murderer.
See, that's terrifying.
So this is the story of suspected serial killer Paul Bateson, who ironically appeared in the 1973 horror film The Exorcist.
What? Like
Dun, dun, dun.
as an actor in it?
Yes.
Oh. Ew.
So I know.
You know what? I actually saw this one in my research, and I almost did this one, so I'm glad you did, because I didn't read the whole thing, but I read that part.
Well, I read the whole thing, and it's fucked. So okay, let's talk about Paul Bateson real quick for just a second. There's
Paul
some information on him, but he's basically a tool bag. So he was born on August 2nd of 1940. He grew up in Lansdale, Pennsylvania, and he was the son of a metallurgist. Have you guys ever heard of that?
No.
What?
So metallurgists are material scientists who specialize in metals such as steel, aluminum, iron, and copper. So basically, they study how metals can be safely transformed into products to benefit humanity,
That's really
which I find to
interesting.
be like really interesting. So
Excuse me.
what's
Yeah.
interesting about
Seems way too smart for me.
I'm like, no, thank you. Apparently, his dad, so the metallurgist, whatever. Apparently, his
Why do you keep trying to
dad-
say that word?
Because I can't get it, and it bothers me when I can't get something. So anyway, his dad apparently would make him stay home from Saturday matinees at the local movie theater, and instead would make him listen to opera on the radio. I thought it was the weirdest.
That's so weird. That already
tidbit.
That feels like somebody is grooming them to be a murderer.
Yeah.
Or like maybe he lied about it. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was a weird thing. But there's nothing else really about his childhood or bullying, nothing. But he ended up
He's
serving.
like, I'm killing people
Yeah.
because I had to listen to so much opera.
It's the opera music.
Is he the phantom of the opera?
He's literally the Phantom of the Opera.
Holy shit. Anyway, he ended up serving in the army in the early 1960s, where he began drinking heavily out of boredom, which I think is really interesting. But he ended up being stationed in Germany, which is where his lifelong struggle with alcoholism began. So he was discharged from the army and returned to Lansdale and actually stopped drinking at that time. So by 1964, he ended up moving to New York City, where he began a relationship with a man who was involved in music, which also, okay. So he actually described himself as not exclusively gay.
I wonder if that was like during the time thing, being
Like
that
the
it was-
70s that you were like,
Yeah.
I'm not
where
exclusively
you were hiding
gay.
a little bit more.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
Because this is all pre-AIDS epidemic.
Yeah.
Like the gay world was a lot different even
Yeah.
before then.
So his mother ended up dying of a stroke, and his brother actually died by suicide. There are some weird parallels, by the way.
There always are.
I know. So he eventually trained as a neurological radiological technician and began working in that field, which I find to be incredibly interesting, which does tie back into why he was in The Exorcist. So his relationship actually ended up ending in 1973, and he moved into Borough Park, which is a neighborhood in Brooklyn. It's part of downtown
so
Brooklyn.
cute.
Brandon and I actually used to live
Like
near
right
Borough
there.
Park. And so I thought that was interesting. But he commuted from Brooklyn, which is literally one stop, into the city. But he commuted from Brooklyn into the city, where he worked at New York University Medical Center. He was really well liked, and his colleagues respected the shit out of him, which I think is really interesting too, because I've heard this kind of stuff before with some murderers where
Yeah.
people are unaware of that, and they're
It's
like,
because they're
great.
like, it's like they have their two different lives. They have their
Yeah.
life where they want people to think that there's nothing wrong with them, and then they have like their backseaty life where they're like
know.
killing people.
Which is
Yeah,
so
it's like
interesting.
the difference between. I mean, I have no idea if this is actually medically or psychologically accurate,
Yeah.
but like the difference between a narcissistic psychopath and just a psychopath, because a psychopath might have a harder time like covering it up,
Yeah.
where a
Totally,
narcissist
totally.
can
Defining the
have the
two.
charm.
Yeah.
And the manipulation
And the
tactics
manipulation
to be able to
and
convince.
the
Yeah.
like social climbing skills
Sure.
that just a straight up psychopath doesn't have.
Yeah.
So scary.
Right.
So he actually worked as a radiological technologist. Like that's what he did for work. So because of that, that is why he appeared in a scene from the 1973 horror film The Exorcist, which, by the way, was inspired because the film's director, William Friedkin, who had watched. So the story is that William actually went to the hospital that Paul was working at to actually view this team perform this cerebral angiography. Yep.
Here's another one.
So he actually went to go like see this team perform this surgical thing because he was that was the media card, because he was going to put this into the film. And so at the time, these procedures were performed by puncturing the patient. The patients.
The patient.
What is happening? Anyway, performed by puncturing the patient's. What is this word?
Carotid artery.
Carotid. I kept saying carotid or carotid, whatever. Carotid artery in the front of the neck in order to insert a catheter through which a contrast agent was injected in order to make the patient's blood vessels more visible under x-rays. So when they did that, though, the puncture, blood would like spurt out in general at the rhythm of a patient's heartbeat, right? Because it's literally your carotid artery,
Yeah.
which is like your main. So the director was sufficiently impressed.
Oh, of course. I mean, why wouldn't
For
you
a
be?
horror film, that he wanted the team to perform the procedure on camera. So
Was it a real procedure that they had on camera?
not a real procedure that they had on
They
camera.
mimicked the procedure.
But they got the surgical team, which included Paul,
so crazy.
to go onto the film to perform it
To
fake
make it
on the
look
film.
real.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
So weird.
it's so weird, but like from a cinematography standpoint, that's
It's
really
genius.
interesting.
It's
To
actually
be like,
genius.
let's get in somebody who actually knows what the fuck they're doing
Yeah.
to do this.
Yeah.
Unless they're a murderer. Then let's-
Yeah.
Which it gets interesting. So this specific scene, which has a lot of blood on screen. If you haven't seen this particular movie, it is the scene when she's like wheeled into the hospital and they're doing the whole, and there's a lot of blood. So it's actually considered one of the film's most disturbing scenes, and many medical professionals at the time praised it for its realism, which makes sense because he literally got this team to go do it.
Which again, for the director, that's really smart.
I know.
He had no idea who he was picking.
And we'll talk about that director again.
But realistically, anybody who's hiring somebody to be on a film, you don't know who they are. They could easily have murdered people
sure.
or go on to murder
He
people.
had not murdered anybody by that time.
As of yet.
well,
that we know of.
maybe. So in the scene, it's actually Paul who speaks most of the dialogue. So he had, in general, a calming bedside manner at work, and he had that in the film too. So you can actually, he can actually be seen in the background early throughout the scenes when she's like being wheeled in, and then you can also hear his voice off camera, instructing her and warning her that the puncture would hurt, but he was like reassuring her the whole time.
So weird. This makes me want to watch the movie.
I know. So I want to talk about The Exorcist a little bit because this is a incredible film that has a lot of weird shit tied to it.
Yeah, I've
because
heard
a lot of the cast thinks that it's cursed.
Yeah.
In general. So
Like the poltergeist.
it's similar.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, sometimes you just don't fuck with stuff. But the interesting thing about this production is that it was plagued by like really strange and sinister things from the beginning. And so I pulled this information from an article that was written based off of the documentary called The Fear of God, 25 Years of The Exorcist. So in that, the very first thing that happened was a fire broke out on the set of the McNeil home, which is the main family's home. Where the exorcism was. So like that was like most of the film was like her in her bedroom. And So it claimed the whole set except for one room, which was the bedroom where the girl was possessed. So it took 6
that's
weeks.
creepy.
I know. It took 6 weeks to rebuild the set, which was interesting. So in the first week of filming, Max von Sydow, I think that might be how you say his name, who actually played the father in it, learned that his brother had died, delaying production. And then right after, about the same time, but a little bit after, Linda Blair, who played the main character, the little girl, Regan, she lost her grandfather, which caused another delay to production. So we had 2 deaths.
That's weird.
So from there was a 10-foot demon statue that was supposed to be used in the film that was lost in Hong Kong en route to the filming location in Iraq.
How do you lose a 10-foot demon
Where did
statue?
it go?
Where?
I don't know.
Oopsies.
But they filmed like the archaeological dig site in Iraq.
I love
this
you fucking up so much.
Thank you. I know, it's usually you. Fuck.
I know.
But anyway, it was lost en route to the filming location in Iraq. And then Ellen Burstyn, who played Linda Blair's mom, said 9 people died during the production, including an assistant cameraman's newborn baby and a night watchman.
How did they all die?
I don't know. Another death was actor Jack McGowan, who died shortly after appearing in the film. He died of complications from the flu.
Jeez.
And then others on set suffered lifelong injuries, including a crew member who lost his toe and a carpenter who chopped off his thumb.
Oh my God.
And then also Linda Blair, again, who played the little girl, Regan, shared that she fractured her lower back while convulsing in a harness. So we watched the film and she's like convulsing in the air. She's in a harness. And she remembers screaming, "Please make it stop. It hurts. It burns." But her dialogue mirrored the script so much that no one knew to stop the scene.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
That's the footage that was used in the film.
Oh my gosh.
that's awful.
I know.
I mean, that's some raw acting, though. It
They're like,
doesn't
"We
get
gotta
any
use
more
it."
real than
Bitch, that was real. So the fire. So anyway, they actually there was so much happening that they were like, we need to bless this actual, like, we need to bless this production. So they brought somebody in to bless the entire set due to the fire and other strange occurrences.
They're like,
throughout.
actually, all of you need a real exorcism.
Right.
now."
There's like people walking with sage burning,
Goodness.
Goodness gracious.
And crosses everywhere.
splashing holy water everywhere.
Jesus. So the premiere happens in 1973. That's when the film comes out. And after the premiere, now we're back to Paul. Paul started drinking again. So he was in the film. The premiere happens. You know, the film opens up to, I mean, it was a big film. And so he started drinking again, which eventually impacted his performance at work. So he ended up getting fired from his job in 1975, which is awful. So he got odd jobs performing light repair work, cleaning apartments, and taking tickets at theaters that would show pornographic films. So he ended up going to AA, which helped him stay sober for a while, but of course he eventually fell off again. And by 1997, Paul was drinking heavily, and he started to visit leather bars in the
Leather
West
bars are
Village
so
and Greenwich
interesting.
Village. I know, we've only been to one.
Yeah.
What is a leather bar?
It's like a subculture of the gay community.
It's like
that.
I don't know that I can describe it accurately
I'd say
because
they
I don't totally know.
I
but
would say it's more kind of like
it's
a
like
fetish.
a fetish, but you
They-
dress in like leather, but it's like leather chaps where your butt's exposed. and,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Yeah, like we went to one place, and it was funny because it was me, Kevin, and to this other man that I mentioned on the podcast at one point.
We went with him?
Yes, we went with him.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Like I said, his name is Tommy. He's a jackass.
Tommy, if you're listening.
We all, I know, right? He probably is too, because he's that kind of person.
He's kind of weird.
But we like walked in our like polos and like whatever. Do you remember that?
we should not have been
We
there.
walked in because we were like, let's go. We've never been and let's experience whatever. And we walked in and we were the only ones not wearing leather, but they were like men in leather police officer outfits with their asses hanging out
Slay.
and like leather jock straps and firefighter costumes and all of these different.
I remember somebody getting a blowjob in the corner, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh my God, where are we?
Wait, so do people like change when they get there, or they like
No,
go
they
on
go
the
there.
subway with
I'm
their
sure
ass
they
out?
go
100%.
there. Yeah, I'm
They
sure.
Like, well, maybe not.
I'm sure
their
it's a little
ass
bit
out,
of
but
maybe a little bit of both.
But no, you'll like if you, I mean, God, go hang down in Christopher Street. No, it's not even Christopher Street anymore.
No, it's kind of all over.
It's kind of all over New York.
But
at
even
this
like
point.
in 1977, I'm sure people were not riding the trains.
No,
in their
they would
leather,
have
or they
likely
would have
changed
changed.
there.
Yeah,
yeah.
but it's just like
But it's like a
it's
like
it's
a
kind
lot
of a BDSM kind of
Yeah.
a lot of
vibe.
a lot of bears are like Brandon and I are kind of considered bears in the gay community because we're like fatter and hairy. And
Wait. This
have
is reminding
beards.
me. Sorry. I saw a TikTok that was like talking about twinks and how every twink needs a handler, and the handler is like a hot woman who's like the best friend, basically.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
And this guy was talking about how every twink needs a handler, and without a handler, they become a demon twink.
Never heard that.
I haven't either.
That's amazing.
I sent it to my mom, and she was like, "Help! What's a twink?"
Oh my
Love it.
God. That's amazing.
Right?
We are not twinks.
We are. I don't know if I ever was a twink.
I was too hairy, I think, to be a twink.
Yeah.
I was skinny enough at
I
one
mean,
point.
you've also have had like a full beard since like what, junior year of high school?
maybe.
I don't think I wasn't a twink. I wasn't a bear. I wasn't an otter. I was awkward. I was just super
Yeah, you were.
awkwardly shaped and built. And
But now you're a bear.
I don't even think I've hit my prime yet.
Well, lucky me.
At least I tell myself that so that I can hopefully
Yeah.
feel attractive at some point in my
Your
life.
peak is coming.
Your peak is coming, promise.
Promise.
That's really interesting. God, twinks, yeah, bears. Anyway, the bears frequent leather often, so they just associate sometimes. But I think that there's so many subcultures of gay. I don't even like dog masks and shit, and
Well, that's a little bit of the leather.
like
vibe too.
tails that go up your butt.
The
Well, that's
furries.
like furry-ish.
Furries,
But
yeah.
there's also, in the leather world, there's like people who dress up as leather animals. And like it's,
Yeah.
there's a lot of layers.
If you're
to
into
gay
the
world.
leather, if you're a listener and you're into the leather scene, let us know what that totally entails, because I actually don't totally know. I know sometimes I'll see stuff, I'm like, oh, okay. But like Folsom Market, is that what it's in San
Folsom
Francisco?
Street Fair.
Folsom Street Fair, which is like
I think.
I don't even know, but I think there's a. That
It's like
is
a whole
lot of
festival,
leather.
but there's a lot of like sex on the street.
Lots of sex. So, yeah. But if you are a listener and you're into leather, let us know what that means.
Yeah, give us a little.
Tell us.
A little 5-star review letting us know what. No, that's
Oh,
not.
that was not.
it.
We're cheering.
Give us
Yay.
a 5-star review.
5-star review and let us know.
No. One day I'll learn.
One
these
day.
buttons.
All right. So 1977, Paul drinking heavily, visiting these leather bars. So this jumps us back to September 14th, 1977, which is inside Addison Verrill's Greenwich Village studio. So remember, Paul met Addison, took him, not Paul, but Addison took him back to his apartment. So 7:30 a.m., they have some romps. They have sex.
Rums.
After having sex.
I had a dingalong, sing-along.
I'm apparently. And then it was not a sing-along after.
No.
So after having sex, Paul, who felt that Addison was not reciprocal in either sex nor in the soul, whatever the fuck that means.
That's just super weird.
Like you just met, you weirdo.
Like you just met at the bar and you just had sex with each other. So how is that not reciprocal?
Thank you. So all of a sudden, because of this, because he was not feeling reciprocated in sex and soul, he said that something just hit him. So what Addison didn't know was that what was supposed to be a one-night stand, because that would be normal, was actually Paul wanting a lasting thing, something that would go beyond sex and perhaps into a friendship, a lover, or even marriage, which gay marriage did not last.
But wait.
Also, didn't you say that you were like sometimes gay?
Right. And you also just met. Like this is the first.
So
weird. It's reminding me of somebody that we probably shouldn't talk about on the podcast.
Oh, I don't know.
There was one point Kevin thought he could be straight and be with a woman, and that woman went on 2 dates with him, and
That's
she
not
fell
what happened. I
madly
didn't
in
think I
love.
could be straight.
You thought you could.
I thought I could date a woman because
thought
my
you could-
ex was cheating on me with women.
No,
That's
okay,
why.
that's a better way to put it.
Thank you.
Sorry. Anyway,
I knew I was never straight.
Anyways,
Anyways.
it kind of has that same vibe of like,
Yeah, she got super
She
obsessed.
fell in love, and she eventually moved in with us into an apartment with the idea that she would break us up because she was still madly in love with him.
Oh my God.
Very strange,
weird.
but it felt very.
But it's all turned into me never telling her I was gay, which is not true. Thank you.
So if you're listening to this, I'll call you out too. I won't say your name because you will probably figure out a way to get back at it.
Oh my God. Yeah, and who cares? about her? Oh, Brandon. Jesus. Who gives a shit about her?
I know.
She's hopefully living her life and is not a virgin anymore. Okay, so since he felt abandoned, we're talking about Paul. Since he felt abandoned by the seemingly or the stranger, Addison, who he had just had sex with, he decided that he had to do something he'd never done before, and went into the kitchen, Addison's kitchen, grabbed a frying pan, then knocked Addison over the head, crushing his skull. So Paul then moseyed back into the kitchen, grabbed a knife, walked back into wherever Addison was, basically dying, and shoved a knife into his chest, and then repeatedly stabbed him numerous times. So
What the actual fuck?
afterwards, Paul stole a total of $57 in cash, a master charge card, Verrill's passport, and some of his clothes, and left. So he left the scene and proceeded to buy more alcohol and just got drunk.
Because that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah. So Addison, of course, he was a reporter for Variety. He worked in it was a film, he wrote about the film industry. He was later found that day stabbed and beaten to death in his apartment. But like many murders of gay men at the time, his murder received hardly any attention from the local press. So when they were there, they did note that there was no sign of forced entry, and they noted that there were several empty beer cans and half-full liquor glasses at the scene. So they just thought, well, it's another gay dude that got murdered by somebody he invited to his apartment. So because of the lack of coverage, the Village Voice journalist Arthur Bell called out the media's complete lack of empathy and coverage toward the lives of gay men. So he actually wrote, and I quote, "We are all aware that there are psychopaths roaming the New York City or New York streets, and they don't advertise their attentions on their t-shirts. When they zero in on gay men, the sentiment often expressed is they brought this on themselves." He continued, "Each year, there are approximately 4 sexually oriented murders of gay men in the Greenwich Village area. Seldom do the papers report the crimes. Not all of the killers are apprehended. Often witnesses are afraid to speak up because of their closet status."
Which is so just shitty.
Yeah. Here's where things get a little bit interesting.
Now it gets interesting.
Yeah. September 22nd, 1977. This is 8 days after the article was published by Arthur, calling out the media. Arthur received a call from someone who said, I killed Addison. And he continued, look, I like your story and your writing, but I'm not a psychopath. He didn't give his name.
I think the fact that you called kind of like helps support the fact that you are a
Wait a
psychopath.
second.
Right.
Because you're worried about what somebody's calling you at this point.
So he then began to tell Arthur how he met Addison at Badlands, where they partied, eventually having sex, which led to the murder. So I wanted to read a little bit of the article because I think that this is really kind of an interesting thing. And the article was titled Phone Call from a Fugitive. I Killed Addison Verrill.
So like he had like a full conversation with this man.
Yeah. So this is by Arthur Bell. And I won't read the whole thing because it's a little bit long, but he says, on Thursday, September 22nd, 8 days after the murder of Variety critic Addison Verrill, my phone rang. It was Jan Albert, who commands the Voices City news desk. This nut called the office twice, claiming he killed Verrill, she said. He wants to talk to you. He said last week's front page story was wonderful, but there's a mistake. You called the murderer a psycho, and he says he isn't. This guy is very aggressive, very theatrical. He said that I'll be able to write a book titled I Talked to a Killer. He's calling back in 5 minutes. Should I give him your phone number? I said, yes. 10 minutes later, the phone rang. A clear, pleasant voice asked, is that your picture on page 23 of The Voice? No, I answered. That's Addison Verrill. It sure doesn't look like Addison Verrill. I killed Addison. Oh, then what did Addison look like? Better than that, he said. Look, I like your story and I like your writing, but I'm not a psychopath. So, it continues. Who is this? I just told you. I killed Addison Verrill. I can't tell you my name. I'm gay and I needed money and I'm an alcoholic, but I was no psychopath. We talked for 20 minutes about the early morning hours of September 14th. He said he had dropped into Badlands, a gay bar on Christopher Street. He was broke and hadn't had a drink for at least 3 months. Addison Verrill, a stranger, offered to buy him a beer. Verrill, he said, had cocaine, some other drug with nitrate, I don't know, and marijuana. The two snorted, sniffed, and smoked between drinks. At about 3 a.m., they left for the mine shaft, an after-hours backroom bar on Washington Street. Do you guys know what a backroom bar is?
No.
I'm assuming it's like you enter through the back and they're open after hours.
No, I think that a backroom bar is where they have the backroom that you can have sex in.
Well, mine shaft that would have a back.
Correct.
room.
That was on Washington Street. So there was more, don't know what that word is. So several people came over to speak to Verrill. I didn't realize he was such a superstar and I wanted to go home with him, the caller said. I wanted more than unilateral sex at the shaft. So I probed Addison to take me to his apartment. He was reluctant because he had to get up early the next morning. He said he was working on a story. It continues at 5 a.m. I was told they taxied to Verrill's 17th floor studio at 2 Horatio Street, where they drank 2 bottles of scotch and snorted more coke.
Jesus.
They had sex about 7:30. When it was over,
That much drugs and alcohol. How are you able to get it up?
right? I mean, that's great. It's a great question. When it was over, the caller said, something hit me. Addison hadn't been reciprocal. It wasn't just the sex act itself that wasn't reciprocal. It was the soul act too. I wanted a lasting thing, something that would go beyond sex into friendship, a lover, or marriage. I can't fathom exactly what I did. I concede that it was my alcoholism.
Okay, blaming it on something else besides the fact that you're just a fucked up human being.
Okay. There's a stigma placed on alcoholics, but I needed money and I hated the rejection. It was the rejection that triggered things. Something flared up in my head. I decided to do something I'd never done before. I took a heavy frying pan from the kitchen and knocked Addison out. Then I went into the drawer in the right-hand side of the kitchen, removed a knife, and stuck it into Addison's chest. I plunged it too high. I should have stuck it a bit more toward the center left.
And he's just telling this to the reporter.
Yeah. Following the murder, he said he ransacked the apartment but found only $57. He took Verrill's master charge card, his passport, and some of his clothes with the money. With the money, he bought booze and kept himself high all day Wednesday. I later learned that he spent Wednesday night at the club Baths, which you guys know what the Baths are, right?
Yeah, it's
a bathhouse where gay men go and have sex. So during our conversation, he asked me about myself and said that I must find my work fascinating. He said he was approximately the same age as Verrill, a little shorter, thinner, and in better shape. At one time, he said I had wanted to be a dancer. He had always been interested in the arts. And years ago, he had been in movies and TV shows. His father was an orchestra leader, and he has a wife in Berlin who has a very low mentality and doesn't understand about my being gay.
okay.
And a 14-year-old son. Okay. So my caller seemed eager to talk. He divulged pertinent information, then stepped back as if longing to be captured, but afraid of giving himself up. What? Oh, I thought you were laughing. No, that was weird.
I didn't say anything.
There was a kind of boastfulness and some remorse. He seemed to feel that talking to a reporter might make him a media star. The word atone came up several times.
How narcissistic was this man?
So the word atone came up several times. It was Yom Kippur. There was no way to atone, he said. I'd like to atone, but I don't want to give myself up. I wouldn't be able to practice again. I'd lose my license. Practice what? I can't tell you, Arthur. Then you'd know. After he hung up, I headed for Homicide, where I talked with Lieutenant John Eucness. According to Eucness, the caller definitely sounded like Addison Verrill's murderer. He had given me some information only the killer could have known. The master charge, for instance, and a white substance on the floor beside Verrill's head. My caller had mentioned some Crisco. Detectives had not been able to identify the substance. The call, Eucness said, was the first tangible evidence that he had on the case. He predicted that the caller was one of the 100 or so people who had been quizzed by the department, and that he would phone again. Elaborate preparations were made. I was given emergency numbers to call and told that a patrol car would pass my apartment every 30 minutes. My friend and neighbor, Sean Considine, I don't know, agreed to spend the night at my place to calm my frazzled nerves.
Oh my God, I would be freaking out right now as well.
Yeah.
Too. By 7 p.m., I was home from Homicide along with 4 detectives and Mary Ann Partridge, the Voices editor. When they left, Sean came over. We ate Chinese takeout food, drank cheap wine, listened to a tape of a Sophia Loren interview, and waited for Mr. Gaybar. Who's Mr. Gaybar? At 11:30, the phone rang.
I'm assuming they were waiting for him to come.
Yeah. Mr. K-Bar. That would make sense.
I mean, he found a man in a gay bar and killed him.
Yeah. At 11:30, the phone rang. This time, another voice said, I know who killed Addison Verrill. The man identified himself. I'll call him Mitch. So Mitch was edgy. Rather than talk on the phone, he said he preferred to see me. Nevertheless, he rambled on. He claimed that he had met someone at St. Vincent's Hospital last July and that they had become friends. The man, Mitch said, was an alcoholic drying out. Mitch's description exactly matched one my earlier caller had given of himself. Mitch said his friend was an unemployed x-ray technician, which might explain the comments about not being able to practice again and the anatomical knowledge evident in his description of the stabbing. So he phoned me the morning after the murder to say he'd killed Verrill, Mitch said. He had to share his experience with somebody. I was the only person he could relate to. Mitch had given this information to the police. And so he said his friend called him, he said his friend called himself Paul Bateson. This another fire in the city. Or not a fire.
It could be a lot of different things.
Could be a lot of things. So anyway, he said his friend called himself Paul Bateson. But I doubt if that's his real name. Bates son of Bates, Norman Bates, was Tony Perkins' name in Psycho. Get it? I know that Paul used other names. Johnny Johnson is one. He told me much more, and he agreed to meet me at a Soho bar at 12:30. But first, I went to Homicide. It was like the big production number from Hello Dolly. I was greeted by the boys and ushered into Eucness's inner sanctum. Yeah, sanctum. My mind went to rectum. I don't know why. He confirmed that Mitch had indeed been in, and that detectives had visited Bateson's apartment at East 12th and University Place, a block away from the Voice's offices, but that Bateson hadn't been home. Bateson's not been a strong suspect, Eucnid said. He has no arrest record. Coincidentally, though, there's a couple of men down at his place now, which I found to be really interesting. So Eucnid advised me to skip my rendezvous with Mitch. Good idea. He told an officer to bring Mitch back to headquarters, suggesting that the cop pay the bar tab. Within 15 minutes, Mitch was at Homicide. They let him go a couple of hours later. Paul Bateson was brought in too. I was told that when the cops found Bateson at his apartment, he said he knew exactly why they wanted him, for killing that guy in the village. Bateson made statements that duplicated the information he had given me. The whole bit, one detective said. Everything matches. He also admitted that he phoned you, and he led us to Verrill's missing passport and credit cards. So Friday morning, I saw Paul Bateson as he was taken from police headquarters to the courthouse for arraignment. His hair was short and blonde. He wore blue jeans, a gray hooded sweatshirt, and work boots. He looked as if he and his clothes hadn't seen soap in a month. And he seemed tense. Yeah, he was just arrested for murder. When voice photographer Fred McDara took his picture, he screamed, "Who is this guy? Why are they doing this to me?" So,
why are they doing this to? Okay, why did you kill someone?
Yeah. Who is Paul Bateson? The police apparently have little information. Other sources have told me that he was a familiar face on Christopher Street, and that he marched in the Gay Pride Parade in June, which is really interesting, with an Anita Sucks sign, spent most Sundays at the Morton Street Pier, and carried a card stating that he was an alcoholic. You guys know the Anita Sucks, right?
No.
Sign. So there was a politician. What was her name? Anita. La la la. She was trying to get. Anita
Bryant.
Anita Bryant. Yeah, she was trying to get gay. Take away everyone's gay rights, basically. Which there weren't a lot of gay rights then, but she was really pushing this like religious narrative. Really, what we're seeing today. So. I've been told that in his search for something that would go beyond sex, Bateman often went to abandoned waterfront warehouses and to the baths. He was a regular at this other place that burned down. And anyway, so he goes on to basically talk about Paul just a little bit and him in the gay community. So that was the article that that Arthur put out. Arthur.
That's so
put
crazy.
out about this after this guy called him.
Imagine
Paul
having
called him.
somebody call you and give you the account of how they murdered somebody.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
So
How terrifying would that be?
agreed. So afterwards, obviously, Arthur called the police and retold the story to the investigators. They believed the person calling, and because he had included details not released to the public. So at 11 p.m. that same day, that Mitch guy called and was like, I know who killed Arthur, and his name is Paul Bateson. So they talked about how Mitch had told him, like I said in the article, how they met at St. Vincent's Hospital, blah, 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 blah. So police were then informed of Paul's name. So let's talk about the arrest and the trial. So police arrived at Paul's apartment where he was incredibly drunk. He was arrested and charged with second-degree murder.
Why just second-degree
Don't
murder?
know. So Paul wasn't surprised when he was arrested, which again was in the article. He basically said when the police were like, "Do you know why we're arresting you?" He just pointed at this article, the Village Voice article, and indicated that was probably why. So here's what's interesting. Here's another twist. Here is another twist in the story. While he waited for his trial, Paul was held at Rikers. So while at Rikers, he began to brag to other prisoners about other murders he had committed.
I mean, because of course.
So while in prison, he said that he picked up gay men and murdered them just for fun. Then he would chop up their bodies, putting the pieces into plastic trash bags and dumping them into the Hudson.
Again,
Wow,
Hudson.
that's the same.
Just wait.
It is. But like
what?
Was he just saying this for clout in prison?
So here we go.
And there's more.
These statements caused the police to suspect Paul in something that was happening at that time that was dubbed the bag murders, which plagued the city between the years of 1977 and 1978. So
Oh, that's cool.
the bag murders. So this was actually a series of 6 total murders of 6 men from 1975 to 1977 that happened in New York City, specifically in the gay community. So the nickname originated from the fact that each victim had been dismembered and their remains stuffed into garbage bags and thrown into the Hudson, which apparently is like what everyone was doing in the 90s.
It's a popular thing to do.
Or the 70s at this point, and all years, I guess. So the identities of these victims, as well as their killer, have never been established because the bodies were so messed up that they could not actually establish who these people were.
Oh, that's so sad.
But the clothing that were found with the remains connected the victims to the leather stores in Greenwich Village.
Ugh.
So police assumed that all the victims were gay. So
Yeah, and it kind of sounds like it was Paul.
during the investigation is when Paul was arrested. So Paul's case went to trial in early 1979. In pre-trial motions, Paul, through his attorney, tried to have his confession suppressed. He said he was drunk at the time and that police didn't read him his rights. He also denied calling Arthur, claiming that his supposed confession was just based on what he had read about the case in The Voice.
Okay, but he said things that nobody knew about the case.
So, and he already
He's
confessed
also
it.
like,
And
you
you've
can't,
confessed.
you can't arrest me because I was drunk at
I
the
was
time, even though
drunk.
I'm always drunk because
It's not
I'm an
my fault.
alcoholic.
So,
Yeah.
and what I maybe didn't mention earlier was that when he got to the police station, he told exactly the same story that he had already told to the reporter. The exact same shit. So he literally had another confession. So
Fucking dirtbag.
the state entered both his confession and the Village Voices article into evidence against him. So the prosecutor also called a witness to the bag murders. His name was Richard Ryan. So he claimed that Paul actually told him shortly before Addison's murder that he had also killed 3 other men named Ronald Cabot, Donald McNiven, and John Beardsley. John Beardsley is a really familiar name, and I'm not sure why. Look that up. I will too. I meant to earlier and I forgot. So each of these men had been stabbed to death in their apartments in Lower Manhattan. He also alleged that Paul had admitted to killing and dismembering 6 gay men.
Jesus. But like, if he was the bag murder, why with Addison he would have done something different?
I don't know. That's a great question because these other 3 guys that he said that he killed, he left them in their apartment too.
Oh, weird.
Yeah,
So it sounds like he had done more than just...
maybe. So the trial went really quick and he was convicted literally 4 days into the trial. So on March 5th, 1979, he was found guilty. The judge, whose name was Judge Goldman, found the connection to the bag murders to be too, what was this word again, Bran? Oh, I forgot. Ephemeral?
Ephemeral, yeah.
Ephemeral? Was that it?
Sorry, guys. Big words.
Big
stumps
words.
us
We don't
both
do big
sometimes.
words.
We both went to art school.
God, but yet I'm a CEO of a company. I can't say ephemeral. Anyway, he said that it was too ephemeral to merit any consideration in sentencing, which is really interesting. So the prosecutor, what the fuck? The prosecutor called help.
The prosecutor called Paul a psychopath. I could read your notes.
He was such a good voice. Anyway, the prosecutor called Paul a psychopath and reiterated his belief that Paul was actually responsible for the 6 unsolved bag murders. But of course, it did not hold. But a month later, he was sentenced to 20 years to life in prison, which was 5 years less than the prosecutor William Hoyt had asked for, again, because it was second degree.
Yeah.
So no charges were ever brought against Paul for the bag murders due to lack of evidence, which is interesting. So here's prison and release. So Paul served 20...
And release.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Paul served 24 years and 3 months of his sentence, becoming eligible for parole in 1997. So, in August of 2003, he was released.
Of course he
His parole was successfully completed in November of 2008. He then disappeared from public record until 2012 when something popped up. What popped up was his apparent death. He is currently presumed dead as there is record of his social security number, according to the Social Security Death Index, which I didn't know that existed, but it makes sense. And it showed his full name, social, and birth date, stating that he died on September 15th of 2012. He was released when he was like 63, which, okay, yeah, so he probably is dead. But this is interesting too. So it's worth mentioning that Paul was portrayed in the next Netflix series, Mindhunter.
Oh, that's interesting. That was a good show. We didn't watch the last season.
Yeah. So I'm like, dang. So now we need to add that back to our list. Another quick note. It is said via the Hollywood Reporter that director that we talked about that directed the Exorcist, William, he visited Paul in prison, and that from his conversation with him, he was inspired to direct the film Cruising, which was a thriller about a cop who goes undercover to catch a killer preying on gay men in New York City. It starred Al Pacino.
Well, I mean, that's not a bad idea.
I know. So furthermore, I thought this was interesting because in my mind was like, wait a second, that sounds familiar. This film was also the inspiration for James Franco's Interior Leather Bar.
I was wondering why you were asking me what his name was.
I couldn't remember. I'm like, what is Franco?
I was like, James?
So Interior Leather Bar was basically a film that reimagined the lost 40 minutes from the film Cruising, which was also a broader exploration of sexual and creative freedom. It's an intense film.
Yes.
It premiered at Sundance in 2013. It is pretty graphic.
It's very graphic. It's very sexual.
It's like a porn. But it was actually a really good film.
Yeah.
I actually really enjoyed it. But it is a graphic.
Yes.
It's graphic.
It's very intense.
Yeah. And like you can see James Franco like in the background watching dudes suck each other out. Like it was a lot.
Yeah.
But it was actually really well done.
Yeah.
I thought. So anyway, friends.
Man.
That was the story.
I love
Paul.
I love that you did this
Bateson.
one because, like I said, I was doing my research and I saw like a little bit of it, and I was like, "No, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to do this one instead." So I'm really glad that you did this one because like I did not read into it, and I didn't realize how messed up this story is.
It was funky. Well, and it makes me think about the bag murders, right? And there has to be so many unsolved murders
100%.
and murderers who just went off that
Absolutely.
just never got caught.
Well, and I feel like this is a very common thing that happens in any kind of minority world, right? And the gay minority realm is in the same to some degrees and in the same light as the police at the time saw them as not worthy enough to do anything about it. And it just seems like this always happens. A lot of the stories we'll end up reading or going through will be talking about the police who didn't do anything because they didn't think that the person was worthy of them solving the crime. Because to them at the time, it was a gross, disgusting thing that people didn't understand, like they still do with the trans community and the non-binary community.
It's just the LGBTQ community in general, but definitely with the attack on trans.
Yeah, well, especially black trans women, they are killed at a higher degree, but the police are just like, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Well, and I
it
think
doesn't matter.
that's why the Village Voice journalist Arthur Bell was so incredibly important because he was actively calling out these the media that would not cover
the media and the police.
Men. Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. So really interesting, but one that I did not know. Like at all. I didn't know about the bag murders, but I also had no clue about this one either. So yeah. Good stories.
Yeah.
Today on Forget About It. New York City Murders. Yeah.
The Dingalong Sing-Along episode.
The Dingalong Sing-Along episode. We're going to need to write a musical now titled Dingalong Sing-Along.
We will. Yeah. We'll have merch.
Actually, we should make a shirt. This is Dingalong Sing-Along. God, why did this happen?
Interesting episode. I feel like our New York episodes have been very interesting.
Mm-hmm. We need to do more of them for sure. From New York, live from New York. It's Homocide the podcast. SNL, hi.
Right.
Anyway, really interesting stuff. So please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, but certainly follow us on wherever you listen to your podcasts, but specifically Spotify and Apple. And be sure to leave us a review. 5 stars. Thank you so much.
Only.
And
that's all we'll accept.
Yeah, that's it. You're not.
And
allowed
if you
to
don't
leave
like
anything
it,
less.
leave a 5-star review and tell us why.
Love that.
Yeah.
Just Love 5 that. Stars all the time.
Or don't tell us why, because I don't care.
I know.
Keep it to yourself. Thanks.
Thanks. Guys, thanks for joining us on this adventure.
I know. It was a good one.
Yeah. Any parting? What was I saying for a while? Because now I forgot. Any? Oh man, I would say any. Well, I need to listen. No, it wasn't parting words. It was like something about objecting, or I don't remember what it was. Okay, well, that's that. Well, any parting words?
Story.
Rude.
Any questions, comments, concerns?
That is what we say
Look
at
out
work.
for those oil drums.
Yes.
Oh yeah, fuck oil drums. That is a great lesson today.
Yes.
Oil drums, and if you're a sex worker, don't follow people to Long Island.
And be careful of narcissistic assholes who want to.
Or if you're a
Kill for no
woman, just be wary of men. I think
Yeah.
that's the
I think
message.
just like, well, especially for women, but just in general, I think that's a general statement. Just be wary of men.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't disagree.
Done.
I just,
Absolutely.
here we have people's rights being taken away and men wanting to control women and their bodies, and it's a brave new world.
Right.
And if you don't know what that means, go fucking pick up a book. Okay. That's that. Have a great day. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.